as I'm getting ready to design, I always design on this yellow sheets of paper. Comes on a 24 and 18 or a 12-inch roll, and there's 20 yards of it. The nice thing about this paper is it has grain in both directions, meaning you can tear off just a little piece of it, and you can tear it off fairly squarely, so that way you don't have a bunch of floppy pieces hanging around. You can also layer it. If I had a marker, if I drew a happy face here, let's get you in. A little happy face on there. And I layer another piece over the top of it. I can see through my multiple layers, so I can test where I want to put, you know, extra things. So then I could put another piece, and you just secure it with a little piece of tape. And then, let's see what else. Oh, and it's super duper transparent. You can see through it super duper well. Look how clear that is. Alright, as we begin our project on our butterfly brush carrier, one of the things that can happen is when you can forget to trace a line. So what I have here is a yellow monster marking tool, and it's a clickable yellow pencil, but the lead is yellow, and it's only available in a few foreign countries, and I've been importing them for us because they do a super duper fine line. They erase with water or saliva, and you can just sketch in the bits. Make it back in there tight for you. You can sketch in where you need to fill in your lines, and it's totally erasable, so they're just a real flexible tool. Let's go down here. I've got a line down here that I'm going to do, and in order to make it straight, I'm going to tape it. Okay, so we're going to take our green color, which is going to be Hauser Medium Green. We are going to spit some out. I'm going to take our makeup applicator. I'm going to tap, and you'll notice that I'm not using my gray palette right now, and the reason I'm not using my gray palette is because I have to use this one up. So for base coaty stuff, I'm using this one, and mixing later on, we will use the other one. In order to mask my table, not that it's so clean, I just put a little piece of paper underneath there. And then you'll tap on with the makeup applicator, straight up and down tapping. This will prevent things from bleeding under your tape. And it also does a really good job of doing an opaque coverage the first time out. Because it's a dense foam sponge, it doesn't soak up as much paint as other sponges. Okay, now this I'll have to be careful because that's where this project bends. Painting on lumpy things is a little bit different than painting on flat things. Okay, and we want to make sure not to run this fresh paint right here underneath on the back side. Not that we can't base it black, but we don't want to do extra work. When you get it opaque, if you have to do a second coat, go ahead. If you have to do a second coat, make sure your paint's shook up, because sometimes it's the reason you have to do that is because you haven't shaken your paint. Okay, we need to mix the purple. What I've done is, because we're using these primary colors, I have decided that we're going to use a mixing experiment here. So I've got my gray palette, which is the middle value. If you followed along from last time, sorry to repeat. But when you mix on a white palette, then black looks really, really dark, and white looks really, really normal. Also, if you're shading roses or something like that, and you need to float with a white color, it's much easier to float when you're on this white paper, on gray paper, so that you can see how your float looks before you apply it on your project. Pardon me. So this is the Gray Matters paper, and on the inside back cover there is a, whoopsie, so sorry, there is a grayscale, and then my business card also has a grayscale on it, so I'm just, for this purpose, I'm going to use this. Okay, so I want to take my dioxazine purple, and you need to use a palette knife when you're mixing, because palette knives are flexy, and so they flex as you're mixing, and you can just pop up and down on the edge of your palette knife and mix the colors. And you need an offset palette knife because you don't want, if you use a flat palette knife, we'll pretend this is one, and you're trying to blend, then you're going to be running your fingers through the paints that are there. So you want this offset handle so that you don't run your hand through your piece. Now what I want to do is just create a medium color purple. I think that's probably going to be about right, so just a little bit of purple. I'm going to tell you a value. So value is what measures darkness and lightness. Okay, so we want to measure the darkness and lightness of this purple with our value scale. Get it all mixed up here. Okay, and then we come over here and we put our palette down here, and we're going to want to squint our eyes just a little bit. And this looks to me like it's a value 3, because that's where the color on the palette knife disappears with the color on the chip. Okay, and because I'm going to use a little bit of green on this piece, I am going to tone this purple down just a little bit with a little touch of green. I'm going to neutralize it just a hair so that it's going to get along a little bit better with that green when I put it on there. Okay, yeah, that knocked that back just a little bit. Maybe a little more hair. Oh, and that green is Hauser Medium Green. Yeah, that just is toning. Toning means that you settle a color down, kind of. You either make it lighter, darker, more in between, or whatever. You tone it to whatever you want it to do. Yeah, that neutralized that just a little bit. It's not so screaming purple. Now, when you mix, you can be concerned because, always wipe your palette knife off right away, by the way. You can be concerned because you might have to make that color again. But that's okay because you have the tools and the knowledge now to do that. So, and if it doesn't match exactly, well, we're doing folk art today. We're not doing some sort of, base coat where you're going to be able to tell that things don't go together. So we'll make sure that we keep it a little bit loose so that that won't matter. Okay, we're just going to tap in with our makeup applicator. We've taped this off. I painted it the wrong color. Green was supposed to be the top color. Have you had this happen? I don't know how this happens, but it frequently happens to me. I've got green paint on here. It must have been when I was taping or doing something. If you take your wave eraser and you dip it into water and you erase on freshly dried paint, which means not paint that's been dried like 4 hours from now, 4 hours ago, then it will soften and take off that paint, but it will not take off your dried paint. Okay, so when the eraser is dry, it won't take off your, when the eraser is dry, it won't take off your dried paint, and when the eraser is wet, it will take off your freshly dried paint. So it's a great eraser of painting mistakes, literally. Alright, so we need to make a medium color blue, or kind of even a lightish color blue. Now what you do when you need to make a color that's lighter, what you do is you put scant amounts, instead of going light into the dark, which will take forever to darken it, then what you do is you take a scant amount of the dark color and tint the light color with it. Now those of you who really don't like mixing, you could simply mix up a bunch of each color, and probably too much there, and keep them in a little paint cubby type thing, or on a wet palette. Okay, so let's see how we like that. Okay, I'm thinking I got it a little bit too dark. Pile of white. Now see, this is where we get in trouble. Trying to lighten. Okay, I think that can do it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide. Now let's talk about what value this is. This is, if I'm looking at this, squinting at the piece, you can't see my face, but I'm wanting to say that's probably a value 8. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to take half of my pile. I want to make half of my pile a little bit darker. Make it a little bit darker value of that same color. And then you're going to have a perfect shading or highlighting color when you do this. And you take half of the pile that you mixed. Okay, so now we have a dark shade color, although that's really dark, a medium color, and then we have this light color right here. And just to neutralize this color, I'm putting just a hair, just a little hint of that same Hauser medium green in both piles of paint. Maybe we'll just call that green our common toner. And we'll sneak a little bit of that green into every one of the colors. Okay. That makes everybody be part of the family. If you use a common toner, then that means that that pulls the commonality together as you're painting. The colors will relate to each other because they have a blood brother, if you will. Oh, and our value on our darker color is value 6. Okay, I'm going to take my medium blue and just tap that right on there. Peel your tape. Always peel your tape as soon as you can. And this, we have a little bit of a goofiness on our line here because we're on this textured background, but we will just use a brush to clean that up. I'm going to use a little round brush to base coat circles on with Hauser medium green, and we keep our angle of our brush more upright, and that will help us keep a better circling shape. I'm freehanding. You can base coat or freehand, whichever you feel more comfortable with. Now you know that these don't have to be perfect. Now on this particular project, I am designing it as I go. I like to design while I'm filming, only because then you get to see a lot of the mistakes that get made, and you get to have part of the decision-making process and see how things kind of happen. Pardon me. Getting all of our little polka dots on there. So if you see something change colors, like if this becomes not purple later on, you'll know it's because I changed my mind. And we'll talk about why I changed my mind. Remember, baked paint is your best friend when it comes to fixing errors. All right, let's shade these little polka dots with some Hauser light green. You don't have to mix this color. All right, and so let's talk about floating. So I'm going to load, if I was doing a normal float, I would load with water, blot on the paper towel, and then I would blend, 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 blend. Okay, see how nice and wide that is. The problem is if I put this on this piece, then it would not work for me. Okay, it would be off of my off of my piece. So what we do when we're going to do something that's a really fine, tight float or shade, where we need a lot of control, we almost have just a moistened brush, where if you wipe it on your fingertip, your fingerprint will show. Okay. And then you tip just ever so finely on the corner, and then you blend just ever so small, okay? And it's going to be a much more concentrated look. So the difference, I hope that you can see that. You need to have good control for these small items like this. I'm going to just float on the right sides of these dots. It's a C stroke, which means I start on the chisel, pull it around on the chisel. I don't turn my brush at all. I'm going to reload paint because I don't think that's strong enough. The brush seems like it might be a little bit wet. Okay, I'm going to go on there, just a little C stroke. Okay, start at the top, end at the bottom. Just reload. I'm not wetting my paintbrush in water. Nice and bright. These, where are you? These MD shaders. They really, I have beat up and abused. You guys see how I treat my paintbrushes. But these have a very fine chiselly edge on them. They really are a great little brush. They don't, they take abuse, my abuse, and they keep on ticking and keep coming back for more. Alright, so on the other side, I've mixed a little touch of lamp black in with my Diox purple just to darken it a little bit. And then with a liner brush or a round brush, I'm going to put a line on the opposite side from where I floated of these polka dots. In a C-stroke kind of way. That means that they're thinner at the top and the bottom and wider on each side. Okay, so we're going to go in and we're going to put, I've mixed just enough white, or just enough of the Hauser light green into my paint, and I'm just going to put a little kind of a dash in the highlight side, and so it's just enough to tint the white. Okay, now we're going to add embellishments. Do a little semicircle going around this with the light green, the Hauser light green. Just kind of altering where they're at. This is just going to be a fun and funky piece, but then what holds your paintbrushes should be fun and funky, I think. Have you ever had this happen where you can't get the paint bottle open because there's the plastic seal around it or whatever? These are, we call them painter's thumbs because they save your thumb. You latch it over the top, it's got a little screw in the end, you latch it over the top and it pries open your paint bottle using leverage by pushing down on the back end. It will actually, if I could find one, it will actually take off your wrapper. Let's see. So you hook it under there, and it just rips the wrapper right off, and Speedy Gonzales. There's free patterns, this rose pattern, and there's a Santa Claus. There's a bunch of versions of them on the website. They're probably under tools. Okay, I've decided that we needed a little bit more of a green tinge on our little spheres, so we're going to do that very concentrated shadow on the opposite side of where our dots are. And that should make these pop up just a little bit. Okay, did you know that when you have a round brush, if it's a good round brush, that you can pull in to your paint and flatten it and create a good flat brush. So now it stays flat if I flatten it into my paint, and now I can use this as like a number 2 flat. So I'm going to go in through here and use this as my flat brush. I'm using that lighter blue that we mixed, and I'm just going to make some checks with my newly invented flat brush. Alright, so we're going to want to begin lining our vines. So we're going to go ahead and just get all the vines lined up and then decide where our colors need to go from there. A lot of this is like I have an idea of where I'm going, but the colors on the vines will change just a little bit, and then the leaves and butterflies will change slightly as we progress through. So what we're doing is we have our Hauser dark green, Hauser medium, and Hauser light, and then this is Viridian green. And if you can get up kind of close, let's get you in there tight. If you can see that, what you have, you see that that's kind of a clear stuff. When your paint is not perky and have a big like healthy mound right there, and it's real flat, and you see some of this clear liquid, that is the paint's not shook up enough. And since it's a color we don't use very often, then probably any bottle that you can find is going to be messed up like that. So we need to shake, which is what I'm doing right now. Shake it and spit out a fresh little pile, and see now how perky that sits up. It's not flat and stuff. So now our stuff is all mixed up together. What we're going to do is we're going to start out with the dark, because I don't want things to leap off there. And so I'm going to mix just a little bit of water. I want it creamy, but not... a big problem that people have when they are lining, I've got a round brush here, big problem people have when they're lining is that they don't put water in their brush. You've got to have, it helps if I get you on camera. Okay, so we want it creamy. big problem that people have when they're lining or using a round brush is they don't thin their paint. You can't use just regular weight paint. And case in point, I'll show you what would happen. Difference, okay? So these are just my notes of colors and stuff. So if I'm on here and I've got water in my brush, I can go around and around and around and around because I've got that thinned. Okay, get wide enough so you can see the whole paper here. Okay, I can just keep going and going and going, and I'm not reloading. Alright, not reloading, not reloading, not reloading. Okay, and the fibers of the brush right here in the middle are actually holding the water just like a soda straw does. So they actually, because it's thinned, they're a reservoir, and then the tip is all you drag. If I drag the whole brush, watch how fast this will dry out. See, now I went all this distance, but here I dried out right away. Now let me load just regular weight paint. Alright, and now I'll show you with just regular water and whatever's in the brush. Okay, it's already scratchy, certainly not flowing, and it's certainly not pretty. Okay, so the difference with a little bit of water and whether or not we're on our tippy toe, you just drag the tip and your hand has got to be straight up and down, okay, to get pretty lines. So we're going to use Hauser Dark Green. Thin it with, so everything on this project is going to be thinned with a little bit of water. And we get our Hauser Dark fully loaded in our brush all the way up to the ferrule. That's what they make brush cleaner for, so that if you get it dried up in your ferrule, you can wash it out. Okay, let's get. So what I want to do is I want to take all of these vines and just go ahead and line them. Don't try to do them all at one time. Just pull towards yourself and gracefully line them. They can be a little bit thick. I didn't intend on them being thin little fine lines. I want them to have a little bit of weight because I'm actually going to change the colors. Now you notice that they are blending with our background, which is totally fine. The color is blending and you don't see it very much. But that's exactly where I want to be right now. I want it to blend so that I can pick out where I want the color to be and when I want it to be shiny. Okay, so then we're just going to do all of these lines just like that. Okay, so I have all of that lined, and now what I'm going to do is with Hauser Medium Green, I'm going to go on my line but not totally taking up my whole line. Just next door to my line. Kind of on it to one side, whichever side you choose. And I'm going to just reinforce the whole line with that, and then we're going to see what it needs from there. So just, okay, so I think I'm liking the green. So we're going to Hauser Medium Green, base coat all of the leaves with a couple coats. I'm using a round brush so that I can get push and gentle glide into these tips. As I'm gliding into the tip, I'm releasing the paint, and then I go up here, and I can get skinny, and then I can get very fat at the same time. So round brushes sometimes can be just a little bit smarter to use than just a flat brush. Okay, so several coats, and you just do want to make sure that you keep it flat painted. Don't use, don't get a bunch of ridges. And the way you do that when you're going to line with use around is you flatten your paintbrush like we talked about a little while ago. Flatten that paintbrush in that paint, and then you have the ability to do a chisel, a flat, or shape it back down, and you can do stroke work. Right, so as I'm waiting for my leaves to dry, then what I have done is I needed to make some new blue. So I've got my primary blue, and then plus a little bit of white, and I've got a darkish blue that's in between. A darker, a little bit lighter, and then the lightest blue. And so if we look on our grayscale, then if I'm squinting at this stuff, I'm going to say maybe I'm at like a 2 here, and this one's probably at about a 1, and then here probably maybe a 4 or 5, and then about a 7 here, and maybe about a 9 here. So as we make our colors, you just want to make them separate so that you can see a value jump. Sorry about that on the camera. So we want to, you know, dark, and if I was orderly, they'd be all in a row on my palette, but this is my ode to painterness. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to base my butterfly body. And you might want to save a little bit of this, put it on a wet palette or something like that. But I'm going to base my butterfly body with this medium dark color. And you know, you might also want to wait to make that, to make your other colors until you're ready to do it. So this butterfly body right here. Okay, so as I mixed my blue paints, I wanted to remind you to make sure to add just a little bit of the medium Hauser green to your mix. And so I have to mix some more purple so I can base a butterfly. I'm kind of being a little bit random here. I'm not being very organized about how I'm mixing things. However, if we want this to be real, and this is really what I do when I paint, and so I guess that just gets to be what it is, right? Alright, so we'll get some dark and get a medium. I haven't shaded or added anything to my my butterfly in the blue yet. I got called away, so a little bit of that green inside our purple, remember? Just to knock that back. I want to show you, I had added a little bit of the green to my blue. Notice that even though this is very similar to this color down here, notice that that's fairly glowing. Okay, and the reason for that is because this didn't get knocked back as much with the green as this did. So this might be okay, but like, look, if you squint, man, that is like a glowing orb of blue. So I may need to knock this back. That's why you tone things. That's why you put just a little bit of another color into things, just to cut the edge of the very, very brilliant colors of some of these paints. So as I do that, then I'm going to paint these whole butterflies in the medium value of the purple with the green and with the green in it. And that value is, I guess, like a 3. So value 3 purple with the white, the diox, and a little bit of Hauser medium green. The reason we have this gray palette is you put your purple color on here, hang on. Okay, now suddenly this purple on here looks entirely different than this purple over here. And so this looks like it's going to be so much darker. And so by having the contrast between this paint and this background be so strong, that causes our mind to kind of screw around with the, like, not understanding how dark or light things are. So when you paint and you mix paints on a neutral background, you can see what you're doing a lot better. Okay, I think you can guess the drill by now. We are mixing our colors. I'm going to mix this red-violet color to make a tone. Notice that when we're mixing our colors, if we were to put this value next to this value and then next to what the value I'm going to mix here and then that value, they are all in the same range. The reason for that is if we put something, let's just play here, if we put something, you know, that bright right in the middle of middle value, middle value, middle value, then we're going to have other problems, right? So what I'll do is I can wipe that off. I know I have paint and I know that my wave eraser will erase that if I needed to too. But anyway, so now I'm mixing a middle value of my red violet. Mix a little bit of our green in that to tone it back. Got a little bit of a dark value, a little bit of our middle value, and we'll check our grayscale to see. Okay, if I'm squinting at it, it's looks like it might be about a 4, not so dark as the others. And then we are going to base coat this butterfly's body with that, and then his, not his body, but his wings, and then his body is going to be the medium Hauser green. We're going to make these flowers be that middle value of blue. Okay, and so we'll leave a little circle hole in the middle. I'm just going to make it a little 5-petaled flower, kind of like circle petals. color for the centers in a few minutes. And maybe I'm making a 4-petal flower. I don't have enough room. Let's see, I think we'll have a purple flower. Let's go into the purples back here. And if I wanted to plan ahead, which would be just like a novel concept, I could take my my yellow monster marking tool and I could come up with my 5 petals. This is what this pencil is brilliant at doing. Sketch those puppies on there. You can grow them to make them touch or not. You know, and I really do think I like the 5 petals better. So what I'm going to do is wet, this is the wave eraser, I'll wet this, and when paint is just barely fresh and not dry yet, you can erase it off of your surface. Now you do want to take care about erasing on your stitching. If you erase too hard on your stitching, I think you'll take off your stitching or make it damaged. So get that erased right there, and you just blot it off. And instead of giving my stitching issues, I'm going to go into just some black paint, which is also a good eraser. Go. Nice and erased. It's always good to know how to handle mistakes. Alright, now as I've used my yellow monster marking tool to get another set of flowers over here. I'm going to go into the little bit darker pink and put pink petaled 5-petaled flowers. We also are going to have polka dots on our leaves. And so we want to polka dot our leaves. And those can be random. They're also on the pattern. Alright, so I've got a balance of flowers here that I've got going on. Now what I've done is I used my medium value blue here. See how we're using that vocabulary, medium value, and then I've got my medium value butterfly wings. Now to get a bridge to hop over to this butterfly wings, I've got middle value flowers here. But then down over here where I don't want so much attention, like my center of interest is going to be here and rising up to the word and maybe to the top. So as I come around to the edges of my project, then over here I switch to a 2-step down darker value of the same color, and I did the same thing down here. So see how that's not so bright as this. And I did the same thing over here. So these petals are a darker value, and then these I did go ahead and make a darker value than the butterfly just because they were just seeming too important looking. Now I'm using milk chocolate to base the centers on the ones that are to the outside edges. Okay, that way it's not so bright. And then I made a gold using those are yellow true ochre and green, and so that's a little brighter. I think it's a little too green looking, so I think I may go ahead and make it lean more towards the true ochre side. Or actually, let's do this. In this particular case, let's mix true ochre and a touch of our what is this color? I said it just a minute ago. Chocolate. We'll mix that just to knock it back, maybe with a touch of green. Deaden that puppy down just a little bit, and then those will be our petals up here. Okay, yeah, I'm liking that. Okay. So we're going to take a little bit of our dioxazine purple and our primary blue, and I want to make a blue that's darkish purplish bluish. Okay, and that blue is taken over my purple, so I'll just put a little dot of it into the purple. I needed it blue up my purple. Okay, so we have our darkish blue color, and we are going to shade where we kind of want to shade them. I know that sounds really like high tech, but what I want to do is I don't want it to be lighter on this far side because my eye will go over here. So I'm going to go ahead and shade Need my glasses. I'm going to go ahead and shade on the far side of this leaf. Okay, and just kind of follow that shape. Notice that I'm chopping as I'm going. Part of that is because working into a rougher surface is sometimes a little bit hard on the float. And in this case, we've left it rough. Got a little more water. And so when we do our float, we'll come over here and we just give it that final smoothing if we want to, and then we can walk it out. And as I want paint to stay on this leaf, I'm lowering the angle of my paintbrush. So instead of being straight up and down, I start leaning backwards. And what that does for me is, like if I do it this way, straight up and down, on paper is always tough. Okay, if I'm straight up and down this way, then I get that look. But if I lean backwards, I get a much darker, much stronger, softer float. So when I want things to be softer and blend them out, then I lean my brush backwards. And I have to tell you right now, I am trying a new brush, and I'm not really going to name it because I don't want to, badmouth any brush. However, I vote that this brush is no good for us, so I'm not liking it. I can use it, it'll make a nice base coating brush, but it is not something that I would bring into the website to use because it's too stiff. And I know, I don't know if you noticed, but that was a fully loaded brush, and I got about an inch before I ran out and had a dry side way over there, so it's not thick enough, holding enough water. So we still like the other flats, the MD shaders that we have on the website. But I'm always trying out new things. Okay, so now we'll go up here down to this leaf over here. We'll go into our dark blue purple mix. And we'll do the same thing. We'll keep our shading to the outside. Now I'm going to start on my tip, and then I'm going to start leaning backwards on this brush, working it in to make sure that I have it into all the grooves. I can walk it out. And that acts as kind of a glaze. And so it starts sucking the eye in. This is going to start being like a frame out here. And we'll do the same thing. We'll shade everything. We'll shade, as I knock everything over. Oopsie. We are going to walk through and shade the leaves on the tops, on the sides, and on the bottoms down here. And then we'll make decisions about these middle leaves. Okay, I wasn't going to do this and show you this, but okay. On this leaf right here, I don't want the whole back side to be shaded because I want this part right here to be a lighter color. But I do want this tip to be shaded. So what I did, I started with my brush up here in the chisel. Then I did my brush straight across, and then I turned it at an angle and faded it off the edge of the piece. That way, see how that gets fat and then skinnier and disappears right here. This is perfect for, it's almost like a C-stroke type thing, but my brush is flat this way, and then as I need it to disappear, I twist it onto its chisel so that it gets skinnier. I will wait for this to dry, and then I'll shade the other side of this tip. Okay, so over here we need to shade this direction. Just working that paint in. I can go right, because this is a dark color, I can go right onto my black and it won't matter. Okay, in the case of our purple flowers down here, we are going to shade with dioxazine purple. Once again, same as the leaves, to the outside petals. And don't go all the way around them that way, just on the dark side of the moon. Just straight diox. Just to give that shading effect just on one side. Okay, same thing here. And then up here, I think what we're going to do, like I'm deciding this as we go along, so I think what we're going to do here is we're going to shade to the light side, so still to this same dark side. Okay, so I have an email from Carolyn. I don't know where Carolyn's from, but her last initial is R. We won't say who she is exactly. Okay, and Carolyn asked me, of course she says she's enjoying Toll TV and that she can't find classes locally, which is one of the reasons I started this. But she asked me, she asked to see me doing an example of a small item like a Christmas ornament. And so you have something really tiny and you're using, say, a number 10 shader to shade on something microscopically tiny. And so I thought I would go ahead and address that. Thank you, Carolyn, for asking questions, because I never know what we need information on until somebody asks a question. So the way we do that, let's get it nice and tight and close on. We'll get in on this little flower, so obviously that's the biggest one, and then this is, and I'm using a 1/2-inch brush. Okay, so I'm going to tight in on this, keep it on the camera. And the important thing here is, like, that looks really big, but remember this whole flower is just slightly over a 1/2 inch, and my brush is 1/2 inch. Okay, so what you do for something like that, first of all, what you're going to do is you're going to do a drier float. So I'm going to actually pinch out some of my water so that it's just barely moist, so I can see fingerprints on my finger, but I don't see any loose water on my finger. Then what you do is you keep your dip into your paint very, very tight. Okay, just a little bit on, let's see if you can see it, a little bit on the corner. If I show you on the palette, that's how much paint I have loaded. Now you blend one side only because you don't want it to spread out really far. Okay. And then you come on here, you just making sure you've got to have some new flats. I'll tell you about the flat brush story in just a second. But so then what you do is you just do the same exact thing you would normally do, and you shade just like normal. Okay. So that's how you control a really big brush on a really tiny project. Is you control the amount of water, and you control the amount of paint, and you control the way that you blend. Okay, so I'll show you the wrong way. Let's say I don't control the water. I go into here and I do control my dip. Then I come here. Notice what happens immediately is that starts floating way out of control. Okay, so that's my controlled one, and that's too much water one. Okay, so, and then say I'm doing a big blend. Well, pretty soon that big blend goes all the way across the palette. So you've got to control your water, control the amount of paint, and then control the way that you blend, just barely blending and pushing on your palette. Okay, these are the bottom lower corner flowers. I'm going to go into primary blue. Remember, we had mixed this color using primary blue plus a toner of the green. Well, when we do that, what's great about this is the primary blue is always going to go with this color, and so will the green actually. So we're going to go straight primary blue, and it's just a beautiful shading color because it is the Papa color. It is the color that we made this color from, so we don't have to worry about it going because we know it's automatically going to go. I'm using the microscopic floating technique, but now I'm not going to keep shading to this bottom side of these flowers because they're on this outer edge. I'm going to shade to the side and bottom because I want to bring that eye in. So I'm trying to guide the eye where I need the eye to go. Okay. And I'm repeating this as I think it needs to be to intensify it. Okay, now if we get over here, you widen out. Now we're in the middle of our design. Well, I know that I want to force the eye. We're going to be kind of slooping along and kind of coming out here and having some magic things happen up here because that's where, if I could keep you on camera on this project, I think half the battle will be lost. Or won, sorry. Maybe I'm losing that battle. Anyway, so I want the eye to sloop along and have some magical things happen here because that's where the word create is. That's where the bigger butterfly is. That's where a lot of action type events are. So now we're on these. We just did these little blue flowers. Now we're on these guys. So if you can follow along with my logic, then what we're going to do is we're going to shade down below to force the eye into this magic little roller coaster area. Okay, so I'll just come here and with the same color, primary blue, I'll shade to the bottom. Now, how come primary blue worked down here to shade with, and those are dark flowers, and how come up here these are light flowers? Well, I'm not leaving as much behind and I'm making it into a softer float. So I'm going to go on this side of this petal, keeping the highlights up to the top middle. Okay, we'll do the same thing down here. When I reload my brush, as long as my float is staying under control, I'm not getting any more water, I'm just dipping into more blue. Get you down on these flowers here. Okay, so this is a really tiny flower, so I'm just barely going to touch that. Oh, I got out of control. The lower part of that petal. Okay, I think my float is leaving. I don't think it's on the chisel so much anymore. Try blending a little bit. Blending will force it back onto the chisel of your brush, refreshing the paint that's there. I'm going to go here, we'll keep it in the lower part. Get a little bit more blue paint. I only blended it once because I want to leave quite a bit behind. This is a dark little petal down there. Maybe I'll do some of this as well. Okay, so let's see what we got. Now we want to go ahead and do the body of our butterfly the same kind of way. I'm going to draw it along here. Now if I'm off on my black, I can come back on my black and I can patch this with black if I feel like it's out of control. Okay, now see, this is coming out very stripy because I have no water and I'm trying to float bigger. So I'm going back and forth over it to ease it in there. I gotta get more water. I can have a bigger float now. I have a blended float, if you will. And then it's not so hard to leave color behind. I'll come over the top of his head and then into the middle of his head. Okay, it's getting a little bit livelier. We've got this little guy over here. Okay, so I'll bet you can guess which side I'm going to float on this little petal right here. Okay, because it's facing our roller coaster area. I'm going to be floating on the upper area of those petals. Little tiny float. This is one of the littlest flowers. Turn my piece so it's comfortable to paint on. Alright, so those are our blue colors. Now what I have to decide is, do I want to go ahead and shade to the middles of these other petals? I think I do. So go ahead and shade the center area of the petals that didn't get highlighted yet. That little blot that I do, that is because I've got just a little too much color and that just takes off just enough. Decided that I like the look of that blue, so I'm shading the bottom area of this stripe. Now mine has that ridge because I screwed up when I made it, but yours doesn't have to have that ridge. You can just have a taped stripe. Just go along the bottom area. Alright, to do our our pinky flowers, we need to put in a little bit of our Diox purple into some of our red violet because it's not dark enough. We don't have enough contrast. Okay. And we'll do our little tight floats using that darker color. Do you see that it doesn't actually matter if you blend it like all at one time? You don't have to have a big pile of this purple color mix, because if this was slightly darker than its buddy on the next, the next door over, it wouldn't matter because it's just going to add to the charm of it. It really, 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 really does not matter. There's very few instances. If you have a big value change, then yeah, it matters. But if you have a hair nuance once the colors blend and you put all the details on, they are not going to show. Okay, so I'm going to do the top sides of these, bottom side of this. Guiding that eye in. Okay, I'm going to do our butterfly wing. This is going to be, I'm going to add a little bit more water to my float because you're doing the tiny float. Okay, and let's get you on camera. Okay, these are going to be to the inside by his body. And so we'll scallop it in, and then scallop this to that wing cut thing there. And smooth it out. If I have a little bit of water trail, I can clean it up with the so-called clean side of my brush. And then I'll pat in, fill in this V area. Okay, so you don't always have to have a perfect float. Alright, got out a little Viridian blue. I had to shake it really well because it's not a color that I use very often. And it is neon on these leaves. So what I'm doing is I'm giving a little kiss of the color I did the shading back here. And it's not so neon on that because there's no light green. I'm going to come out of the blue area, and I'm just going to give that back end near the blue that I shaded a little glaze of that Viridian color, just to give it some nuance. It's got a little more life to it. Okay, so we'll come out of the color, the blue color. It gives it a little bit more richness. We'll stay out of the highlight area. So if you float with a wide, soft float, then it ends up being more like a glaze. Okay, we can go right over layering our colors. Once again, this is why it will not matter if your color isn't mixed exactly like mine, or exactly like your own even. Okay. Yeah, so that adds a little bit more vibrancy to the colors. Okay, now on these that I haven't decided yet, I'm just going to go ahead near the stalk, back from the leaf. I guess if I probably could have decided this already because this is away from our central area. Okay, I'll pick up some of our blue mix. Or purple mix, I guess. Pardon me. And I'm going to come over here, C-stroke on the line, and then bring it down into that tip. Mop it with my finger. Okay, this area right down here I guess will come into the lower area. And this one down here is going to be on the tip. Guy down here is going to be away from the center area, the roller coaster area. Okay, so come over here. Okay, highly recommend this article. It's a series of articles. I think there might be like 6 or 7 in this series. They're Londi Rowley, she's a CDA, and she does an introduction to color theory. And where I found it quite magical, let me go down here. Okay, if we have Exhibit A, this shows you how your normal bird would be shaded and highlighted. Okay, you would have shading over here, highlighting over the tail, shading where the elements meet, you know, shading to separate the wing. And, you know, this is great. This is depth of, you know, this has got value change, and, you know, so does the wing, and so does the gold, and, you know, it's just a pretty bird. But when you come down here, what she's done here is she's added a color, this greenish color, and she's glazed and carried your eye using this other glazing color. I found it quite a magical article, and so this piece that I had originally done was my study piece, and I had cut these out. I really need to put these in a notebook. Let's see what we've got here. Like, and here she shows you color schemes using, so it's the same art, and she shows you what the color schemes do on different backgrounds, okay, and how they come to life or don't come to life or whatever. Makes a softer painting or a lighter painting. Now these are, let's see, I'm assuming, since these were in the same place, that these are the titles that they were in. And I'm going to read these off. It's fall 1999. This is the Artist Journal. Jo Sonia's website still has some of these issues. Otherwise, you have to find them on eBay. And no, I don't have any, so please don't call me and ask. Sorry, and I can't make copies as well. But issue number 38, fall 1999. Issue number 36, spring 1999. I hope I'm right that these are the ones they were in. Issue 41, summer 2000. Issue 42, fall 2000. Issue 37, summer 1999. Issue 40, spring 2000. And issue 39, 1999. So, ooh, yuck! I just dropped the covers into my paint. No, just my fingers. Yikes. Okay. I flipped them right over. Now I have Viridian green fingertips. Lovely. I'm actually not usually too bad about getting things in the paint, but I guess I am today. Alright, so anyways, I cut them all out, and it's just nice and fun to work through just one by one the different elements that she has. See if there's more. Last year I did my certification, started my certification, and this was the mess that I had cut out. I think these are them, although it's not all of the articles in here. This is just all of the covers. So I highly recommend these. They'll be on Jo Sonia's website or on eBay, or get your friends to pull them out of their closet and share them, you know, make a class out of it or something like that. I think it's cool. Anyway, so where I'm going with this is the normal thing to do would be to shade this over here with a darker green, or, you know, shade it over here with a darker green, and then highlight with a lighter green. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to walk the eye through my piece using the colors that were touching the different things, and I wanted to have the blue reflecting onto my leaf over here from the butterfly, and then this purple onto the back end of this leaf because it's coming from the butterfly, and etc., etc. So as I'm working my colors around, I'm going to just dance the colors back and forth onto each other, and see what we get. But I'm not quite ready to do that, so one step at a time. I'm going to use my yellow marker. You could trace your pattern if you wanted to. Use the yellow marker, and what I want to do is get these butterfly wings where I want them to be separated. Okay, and that gives me my green banding separation. I've got some decorating that I want to do here. We're going to use Hauser medium green, and we're just going to line on the green separations and the green dots. Okay, as I'm getting ready to, or as I am lining these things right here, I want to point out something that's really, I think, kind of important, and it makes a difference between the men and the boys, if you know what I mean. Okay, so as I'm going along here, my base coat of my pattern has got a little bit of a flat side to it. This is just not very gracefully round. And my brush did not do a flowing job of going around that. If I were going to do the men and the boys thing, where, you know, you've got to provide flow, and with your brush, I've got my brush loaded, I press down, and instead of following the line of the stuff, that's a very ugly line unless it's just supposed to be that way, go ahead and pretend, split the difference, make it up, and let the brush flow, push, lift, and arch. And just like if you needed to get a little closer to where that corner was cut right there, if you push on your brush, then you'll get a gracefully arching flow to it, okay? So what I had done was just followed my line and forgot all about this, and as I went back and looked at it, I went, ew, you know, that's quite yucky. So The idea is my brush is straight up and down. Let's get a little bit further back. So posture is everything. My brush is straight up and down, and I reach forward, place my brush down, and allow the brush to swing and make the arching stroke. Okay, that is what makes the difference between a beautiful painting and something with rough edges. Okay, I mixed up a light value. Let's check out our value scale. Don't mean to show you this every stinking time, but I think it's important. So we have a value of probably an 8 of a light color, and I made a value 6 as well. So I'm going to then, with the darker value, I'm going to highlight my darker flower petals, and this is that controlled float. And then with my lighter highlight, I'll highlight these lighter ones to the inside. Okay, so if it screams off the chart, then we'll want to stop. And I don't think that's quite screaming, but maybe we want to inch into just a little bit of purple and darken it up for the darker side. We do want it to show, we just don't want it to scream at us. Okay, now see how that shows to the light. Okay, and if it got darker and darker over to here, then we might increase our darkness of our purple. Now the other thing that I'm doing, instead of reloading my brush, I am tilting my brush angle so that all that touches is the little corner when I do the little flowers. So that's another technique for using a big large brush. Now I'm going to switch to my lighter color, and we're going to keep this to the brighter side. Ooh, you see how that's just fairly electric. Let's go into a split difference of that and the other one. It's just a little too bright for me. Okay. And then we'll keep this coming into the middle. So I turned my piece. Okay, so now as we see these, and we see that the light all goes this way, I'm going to tickle in just a little of the brighter color on the end of this brighter purple. A little bit to the top here, not the whole thing. And that then inches these in, okay? At least that's my theory, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, now we've got to get some details on these. I put my butterfly antenna in the same green. We're going to go into Hauser Light Green, which I'm almost out of. Yeah, squeeze some out. Too bad these aren't flexible. We could just squish them. I'm going to flatten my liner brush, my round brush. When you do that, you just put a dry round brush through your paint, into dry paint. Don't put water up your paint. And if you have a good round brush, then it should keep a flat like that. And then that makes it into a tiny little flat brush. And we're going to create these, made it a little smaller, so I don't want it too flat. Create little checks coming around the corner here. Okay, and go top and bottom. Okay, here's some little details. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start highlighting these elements. So we want these towards here to be brighter, so we're going to bring this Hauser Light Green on our brush. Bring it down towards the butterfly head. And then I think I'm going to go ahead and do some on the back side of his tail right here. I'm going to keep that stroke graceful. And then we will go into the Hauser Light Green plus some white. So that's like a dirty brush. Oof, I'm getting paint all over myself today. So I'm just going to reach into some white right there. And I'm going to use that a little bit skinnier and smaller as my additional highlight for that color. Okay, and then that pops that up just a little bit. And we could, if we wanted to, just give a little bit of extra pop to some of these little checks. not to all of them, just to some of them. Okay, then we'll use that darker purple mix, whatever shows. Now I'm suspecting that we might have to use the lighter purple mix and a nice liner brush. Okay, I want to add these little half circles around the green. Okay, and so that's pretty bright, but I'm going to have to use a mix of the two. When you use your liner brush, you want to thin it with your water. Okay, so and just do these on random sides. Don't make them all lining up. They're not closed. They're just semicircle little things. My friend Erica used these on a project and I loved them, so thank you, Erica. Okay, get those in there. And we can add, if it's open right there and we've got an open space, we can fill in. It's almost like water rings, kind of. That's what these remind me of. Okay. Again, I think at this point, let's go ahead and shade our butterfly body. I'm going to go into straight purple and hope we don't make it screaming too much. See if we're dry. Okay, we're going to come down here next to the green, next to the head, and I'm going to walk it out, kind of like that same glaze we used over here. Walk it out, walk it out. That's going to increase the intensity of that purple. It's going to make it much prettier. And I think I'll bring this out quite far. I haven't been super pleased with how, about that color. We'll go ahead and shade over this decoration. Same thing right here. And then when that dries, I think we'll repeat that shading just to deepen it by the wing. Okay, I want to shade, repeat my shading with the purple. I am doing the ultimate in taboo. I have my water container on this side of me and I have my palette over on this side of me, and it is driving me crazy. I should stop and clean up my mess. But I have too many things going on at the same time. It is the worst way to paint in the world. If you catch yourself doing it, stop. Don't do what I do. I'm excited to get this done. I can't wait. Okay. So, now what I think I want to do, with that same brush, let's go ahead and take our Viridian Green color, and what's that what that's called? Yeah, Viridian Green. Let's go into this with a nice strong highlight, or not highlight, but shade. And let's go ahead and give little accents to our butterfly wing, and gradually fading up. Same thing over here. Gradually fading out from there. Oops, flip my brush over. Yeah, it's these kind of little surprises, I think. Doesn't that make that wing look so much different now? It just, that light's coming over, it settles into the dark where the crease is. I just think these are the kinds of things that are just a lot of fun to add and tuck in. Play with your piece. Don't just, you know, when we were kids we weren't allowed to play with our food, but I think we're allowed to play with our painting because it's our painting. Just have fun with it. Increase it if you need to. Okay, see if you like it. Maybe that's just a little too bright for me, so I'll tone it down. Okay, I'm liking that. Now maybe I want to go over here and maybe I want to increase that depth of that color on that. Okay. Squint at your piece as you're figuring it out. Okay, so then you'll notice that the green dots that I put on here don't really show up very much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to selectively lighten one side of them. This one's in the dark, so I won't want to light that too much. just one side, and then I'm going to float with a little bit of dark. And then the ones that aren't in shadow, see now they show up much nicer there. The ones that aren't in the shadow, we're going to go in with our mix of green and white. We're going to highlight them where we want them, up in the upper-ish left-hand corner. Yeah, that makes me happy. Okay, maybe we want to increase just a little bit more here. This is really kind of a final step kind of thing where you just start really popping contrast. Okay, so we'll get in tight here. To do a water drop kind of an effect on these little droppy thingies, that's as close as I get, we're going to go into our purple with our really fine liner. Get a little bit of thinned purple. Thinned purple means that we have a little bit of water on our brush. And on the highlight side, we're going to just line it. The very, very soft, subtle line right next to the green. Okay, and that'll give us a little bit like it's got depth. Okay, and then we want to shadow these, which, if you can believe it, we really could use this monster-sized brush with barely any water in it at all. And we're going to need, let's do the Viridian green. Just like blend it 2 times. And let's go ahead and on that back side, we'll give it just that little corner hiya of the Viridian green. Oops. Okay, now they show up. How cool is that? Okay, and I do think we need a little bit of highlight back here. And I guess that's in our highlight zone. So we'll go into our Hauser Light Green. It's almost a dry brush thing, but just using the round brush instead of a dry brush. Maybe green plus a little bit of white. Okay. Now we've got to do the same thing on our antenna. Can't just have our antenna be plain and undressed. So we'll go into our Hauser Green. And where, I like to do this where it hits a high point. And then repeat again where it hits a high point on the inside. I don't think that's enough, so I'm going to do it one more time. And then plus a little bit of white in between. You don't want to start the white on that darker green, it won't look nice. Now I'm in a strange little spot here because we have this creased and it bubbles just a little bit because of being folded. So you've got to take it a little bit slower when you're trying to work around stuff like that. We need to highlight our blue. We need to mix a lighter blue. So we'll go ahead and mix our primary blue. And we'll get, okay, we had primary blue. I thought we had it all mixed. Oh well. Their lighter blue. So that's our light blue right there. I think we're going to need a little bit of toning with our Hauser Green, our little mother color that we talked about. And we need a significant amount more white. And oh no, I got a little bit of purple in that. Guess what? That is not going to matter at all. Okay, got a light color. Now I'm going to add more white just to the edge of that with a little bit more purple, it seems. Okay. Because all those colors on the palette, it's going to look like a happy accident. Alright, so float with our floater with the light blue to the front of his little face. Ooh, way too bright, huh? Okay, so we'll back up and go into a little bit darker blue. Just walk that down there. Okay, a little bit more. Alright, and then we have to do the same thing on our flowers that we did on our purple flowers. Okay, so towards the butterfly, we want a light color. Now if it looks too white or too chalky, then that means you have too much white in your shade in your highlight color, and you need to back off with the white go a little bit more blue. Okay, same thing here, a little bit less. As we get to these further back regions, we're going to want less color, less highlight. Okay, now this can be a little bit brighter because it's still in that roller coaster zone. But look at these flowers way over here. See how dark they are? We're going to want to go into something that is just pretty much a dark, a medium-ish dark blue to highlight these with. Oh, not dark enough, not light enough, sorry. See if we get it. So we can use our eye. If we can see it, then we know we've achieved what we were after. If we haven't, if we can't see it, then we say, oh, I need to go back and get more. And then did I accomplish enough over here? I don't really think so. So we can go into that lighter color now to repeat. Got a little secret weapon that I'm going to pull out here in a minute, so we don't have to get all the way there with this step. We've got these little guys over here on the corner of my brush. And this poor little guy's lonely down here. Let's give him a friend. Ooh, too bright. So see, we just adjust it back. You can use your eye. You say, oh gosh, is that too bright? Yes, it is. I'll adjust that. Right. So now our blues are all, now I think I want them a little bit more down here in this corner. Just a little bit more. That doesn't mean like the same place. I want just a little bit more on the tip of these forward reaching little flower petals. Remember that thing about odds and evens. Try to do things in odds and evens and then keep things to like a point. Okay, same thing here. We want this a little brighter. That's not bright enough. We're going to go into the lightest color now. Now we snuck up on that lightest color. And now here, same kind of thing. Kiss of something over here? I think we might. Okay, and now our butterfly is looking a little bit lonely. He's not looking like he's the center of attention anymore. So we can beef up his highlights. Oops. And go on our black. Oh, good job. Sideways. Keep that within that highlight. We're going to do a little bit of a kind of a pointillism kind of thing, using all kinds of new vocabulary words. That is kind of a painting that looks like you did it all with dip dots. Okay, and we're going to highlight, oops, not bright enough, I'm going to go on the brightest highlight, going in and out, just using dippy dot end of my pointer brush, my liner brush. Get in there. Okay, so it's just using that dippy dot. As we get back into this, if we want to go into it with the dippy dots as well, then we would change the color to a little bit darker color. Okay, so towards the front it would be the highlight color, towards the middle it would be the darker color. You can actually paint and highlight and shade a whole entire project this way. And this, if you are a crappy floater, this is a perfect way to hide it. This just makes everything forgiven. You can layer them so that you get dippy dots of various, you can have like a darker color underneath, just like you would a highlight, and it was too strong, and so you went and did a little bit lighter. As you get into the darker area, you've got to have some contrast. I know I'm jumping all over here, but like I can't do these dots in the same color blue as I shaded right here because they'd never show up. But if I do just this middle color over here, like see, you can totally see that. So we have to do it in a value that's just up from the other value. So we'll do the same thing on the tips of the flowers that we want to have attention. I'm just using the tip of my liner. Okay, and I don't want these everywhere. I want them pointing towards my center of interest. Okay, those are where the bright ones are going to be. And it just makes them fluffy, and I don't know, like there's pollen happening. And now we might change to a darker color, like a really darker color. We might do back here just a little bit, not so much. And then up here, because these are darker, we're going to have these be in a little bit darker mode. I think this is fun. So see, now all of our worries about having everything perfect have completely gone away because, you know, we're scribbling all over our piece. Okay, so here we would do the same thing, where things come out towards our roller coaster of color. For those who are catching up to this and didn't hear that part, then we have this center of interest kind of flowing, and we're trying to keep our lights pointed towards that like roller coaster of light. Okay, so now we're going to go into right here a little bit. Okay, and finish with the rest of these over here on the far side. Okay, we haven't shaded our, trying to wreck my brush. We haven't shaded our, or highlighted our pink flowers. We want to be really careful because this is at the end of our roller coaster. So we want to keep this has got to be muted a little bit more, but we're going to do some things to it, so I think that'll take care of itself. But let's do our flowers while we're on them. I'm going to get out and squeeze out a little bit of my red, what is it? What color are you? I don't know. Red violet. I was right. Okay, so we know we don't want it too bright, so we'll make two piles, a darker and a lighter, of the red violet. Okay, we know that'll be two. There we go. Okay, so we've got our two piles of colors. And we want to just go into our flat brush, start with our darker color, or darker highlight if you will, and we're going to keep that twisted towards our roller coaster. See what kind of fun terminology we can use. You can say, oh honey, I painted a roller coaster. He'll be like, okay, she's lost it. Okay, and as we see if we like that, go along. Now this little guy right here, have you seen a better tool than this yellow monster? Oh my god, I just love it. It's just so fine and just does everything it's supposed to do. Sketch right on there. Okay, and then this gets this little skirt. Okay, and I want to highlight back here on the back end of this. So I might need to go into that a little bit lighter pink, just because I know what I'm going to do next. And I've got it out. Okay, and now we're into our lighter color. Ooh, boy, that was too much. Too much still. Okay, I need something in between. Remember, not everywhere. Now I've already done my purple with the little pointillism dots. Lonnie Raleigh, the one that I was talking about with the color theory, if any of you know her and can talk her into publishing a book on color theory or teaching a class, I would happily take it or host it or video it or something. I don't know, it would be delightful because I think she's just got a really neat way of portraying the information. Okay, now we'll do our little pointillism stuff on that. You know, and God forbid if I'm, you know, not so perfect at this color theory and I'm just maybe making mockery out of everything she said. I don't think so, but I'm sure that I haven't got it all correct. This is just what I know about what I know. I think that's all we can do is the best that we know right now. It's my disclaimer. You like it? Okay, so we need something a little bit darker. for the back sides, but just a little bit lighter than those back petals. Now this brush is the Raphael Kalinsky Quill. I don't know if I'll have talked about it on the website yet or not, but it should be on there. This brush is probably the most amazing brush I've ever used in every way. But it allows you to scribble on those little dots just perfectly. Okay, so let's give this guy his antennae, and I've got him in red, so we've got the red violet, and we'll go into a darker, oops, a bit of water is needed. Okay, nice flowing line. Let the brush do the work. If you try to do the work, you'll force it and it will not be very graceful. Well, you've got your liner out and it's wet with Hauser Medium Green. You want to start connecting flowers to their stems. Okay, very gracefully. Okay, now this flower, this is interesting. I've got it growing right to here, but this is like got it going right through the middle of that other flower. So instead of doing that, how can we do this? I'm thinking I want to try to arch it into it, but see, that's going to arch in a funny way. But you know what, I like that better than the idea of it going around the other way, so I'll leave that. That was not a very good design choice. Okay, same here. Go to there. All of these guys. Okay, get everybody connected. Then what we do is we go back into things, and on the ones that are pink, we're going to draw pink into their stems. On the ones that are purple, we're going to draw purple in. Like the color is growing up through the flower. We're in fantasy flowerland is what we're doing right here. Okay, we might even give, okay, we've got pink on here. Let's bring some pink into our stem here. And then maybe even a little bit of pink here. And then let's highlight it. Let's go up a step of highlight. But we don't want to cover that all up, so this line's got to be finer. That's where a really fine liner brush comes in handy. So now see, this pink butterfly is kissing this pink stem and this growing pink flowers. Okay, and then what we'll do for our leaf highlights, instead of doing what seems rational and doing green highlights, we talked about this earlier, what we're going to do is we're going to give a little tickle of a highlight in the color near it. So in this case we've got pink highlights. Whoops, ooh, off to the edge of the world there. Spit is your friend. Oof, oof, oof. But dirty fingers are not. Okay, come back here and fix it. So, see how that just picks up on that? That's just lovely. On the back side of this leaf, we're going to do the same thing. Okay, and you guessed it, on the top side of this leaf. Nice glazes of color. And then now as we move down to this guy over here, you know, he's on the purple side or the blue side. I'm going to go ahead and do him, I think, in purple. And you can just use those mixes that you've already mixed. If it shows up too strong, then your color's too light, wipe it off and do it a little bit darker. I think this one needs to be a little bit purple. Oh, that's, okay, so that's too bright. I don't happen to have anything lighter or darker mixed, so I'll go into my purple and just brush mix. Okay, so we're telling a little story with our color. Now back here on the bottom end of this leaf, right here, okay, we've got, you know, we're in purple land over here, so let's go ahead and give this some purple. still in purple land over here. So we'll go up here. Now I haven't decided on a color for the create yet. So I have to think. Don't know what to do. A little extra highlight with a little bit lighter color next to the edge. Now we need a little bit of blue, because this one over here is in blue land, and that's more of a white land. I'm running out of the blue, so I have to brush mix that. Okay. And the blue, in theory, is a little bit more, it's a cooler color, and so it's kind of more like a shadow color would be. So when it drops into the shadow land, then it's cooler. It doesn't stand out as much unless there's a big contrast in light and dark. Okay, so all of these, where these things come in, on the purple flowers and the blue flowers, we're going to make their stems be a little bit purple, a little bit blue, and wind that in. Okay. All right, when you're painting on black, especially on black with texture, I have wiped off many mistakes with my fingertips. I haven't gone to the restroom yet, so I haven't washed my hands yet. So I have smudged, yucky stuff right there. You can see it kind of like a little halo effect. The easiest way to clean this up, and usually you would wait until you're all done, is to go in with a little bit of your background color and clean that up. It's always a good idea to save a little background color so you can match it, so it becomes your eraser. You could erase that as well, but I think it's nice to show a variety of fix-it mistakes, fix-it tricks. Okay, so for right now, I'm pretty happy with where we're at with this. Let's get you a whole view. Okay, I don't really see a roller coaster of highlight going on right now. I see sort of a highlight glowing through the middle, so that tells me that I need to work on that and increase that. So how am I going to increase that? Well, the first thing you can start with is right down the middle of your piece. So we'll get into our light pink, highlight within this color pink, and now that starts seeing that it's a little bit brighter. Then we would go into our blue, and we would highlight that a little bit more. Okay, maybe bring it down. Got to keep your liquid on your brush. Okay, now I'm going to go into Hauser Light Green and some water, and then we'll highlight this with the Hauser Light Green where we don't have, and where we don't. Okay, now I was just about to do that again with the hand with all the yucky fingerprints on it. Okay, so Hauser Light Green will highlight the green, and that'll help bring our eye down. So we start seeing things brighten up just a little bit. We could go into a little bit of white and further lighten. Don't want it to get too white. Okay, so then we go on a tack here with a little bit of our brightest. We've got our whites in here. I'm going to go into white. Just a plain old white. This is another reason for gray palettes right here. Every time you're floating and you want to highlight a rosebud or something like this, if you're using a white float, you cannot see that on white palette paper. This Gray Matters palette paper is the same price as your white stuff, and you can see all the colors on it. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to float a little bit of glaze on the areas up the center, just a little bit. Okay, so now things are starting to pop up just a little. Now over here we've got this pink color, so we need to highlight just a little bit more on our pink color. but not taking over the color underneath it. Same thing here. Okay, so we start bringing the eye around. Okay. Maybe a little bit more down here at the base of these flowers. Okay, got our belly. Let's get our blue. So, if you don't want to increase your light, then sometimes you need to decrease and get darker. So what can we get darker on? If we have these showing up just a little bit too much right around here, then maybe, you know, like this leaf right over here, and even these highlights over here need to get toned a little bit more. And the way we can tone things very easily is to wash over them. We'll start on the dark side. You can wash over them with a little bit of blue. And start decreasing how much they show up in the dark side. And we might go ahead and just glaze the little bit of blue on our leaf corners. Same thing over here. Okay, that's just primary blue. We might carry that love all around. Same thing here. This leaf is sticking out just a lot down here. So it's almost like a glaze, almost not. Okay, so we start seeing a little bit stronger trail coming in through here. This one's got the same problem. I'd say it's probably my leaves pulling this apart. Okay, so let's go on here and knock that bad boy back. I already did him, but I want to do him a little bit more. We'll have to let him dry. This one over here, definitely. Now he leads up to our letters, so we don't want to get him too knocked back. Okay, and we start squinting. We start seeing that, yes, we're trailing just a little bit better. Our pink up here is probably too bright. So what we'll do is we'll knock her back just a little bit. Okay, how are we doing? Okay, I'm happy with that. So we want to go into our milk chocolate. And we're going to shade our centers with the milk chocolate. And that's going to be keeping things to the dark and the light side again. So if it's brightest over here, we want to shade to this back side. It's not going to be dark enough. Let's put some purple in with our milk chocolate. And that should do it. A little bit more. Once again, how come we can use purple? Well, we can use purple because we know that it's in our family of colors. Okay, so if it's in your family, then it works. Gotta stay in the family. Then we want to take some light and we want to do the same pointillism in the bright side, and we're going to use our true ochre for that. Alright, so we did our letters with the top part with milk chocolate and then the bottom part with true ochre. And then we want to create a fade in the middle. So we'll get our round brush and we'll take out fresh paint. It'd be nice if I probably had that done ahead of time. I think I finally decided what I'm going to do up here. I've sketched some little flower things up there. Sometimes, you know, you have to allow this process to just kind of work its way out. It tells its own story in a way. Alright, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to load my brush into my milk chocolate, and I'm going to make sure that my color comes down evenly so that it's got coverage. I want it straight letters. I take a lot of time to make sure my letters get base coated straight. There's not many tricks to it except for just taking your time, using a brush that fits, and going slowly so that you don't, you know, biff your edges. And my favorite technique for getting clean edges is to go with black afterwards and just clean up every little edge that you don't think should be there. Okay, so we wash our brush out. We're going to load in by just flattening our brush into the yellow, into the true ochre, sorry. We'll flip our piece upside down, and then we want this to come down from the lower area and disappear right about in the middle, in the same place on all of the letters. This is important because it creates like an even flow. My voice has decided to stop working today, I guess. And you don't want this to evenly, you're just wisping, just barely wisping this. Okay, get that nice and even. You can squint your eyes at it if you need to. Shape following strokes here on the letter C. And then I'm going to give this one more base coat down here because I think it's just a little bit transparent. Okay, so what we've done, now we're at the stage where you don't get to see everything. What we've done is we based this butterfly body the same purple as we did the flowers and the wing. This is Hauser medium green with Hauser light green dots on the letters, on the leaves. And now what I want to do is I want to create this third butterfly, and we've got to finish this guy over here as well. So I'm going to base his body with the true ochre and a little bit of the milk chocolate, just to tone that down just a little bit. I don't want it screaming yellow up there on the top. Okay, so that's his body, maybe a little more. That's just a brush mix because we're not using very much of it. I want the create word to be a center of interest, but I don't want it to take over the room. See, like that loud, obnoxious guy at a cocktail party or something. You want everybody to have a place in the show and everybody to get some attention in order to have a successful party. And so at this party, this butterfly is center of attention, but not everything. Even though she thinks she's everything, we won't let her take over. And if you squint at your piece, and the first thing that you see is this little butterfly up here, then you have got him too bright. So that's how you tell. You don't need to worry about formulas and all that kind of stuff. It is easy to tell. Okay. And so then the edges of the wings, the little detail out here on the edge is going to be the, let me do a little brush mix here. I think we're going to do a little red violet and the true ochre. I'm going to make a kind of an orangey color. It's just brush mixed. Oops, and hello, I just made the same color I was using already. How fun is that? This is not looking so well. Okay, I have to figure it out. Okay, figuring it out means getting a new bottle of paint out. So I got out Canyon Orange. I actually, in truth, I had already had out Canyon Orange. I just forgot I had it out. I thought I was going to be smart and create that color, but I didn't. Okay, so I'm getting a little bit of orange up there. Now, if you have only orange in this one spot, then that is what they call an isolated color, and that is not, that's a no-no. Okay, so we're going to have to kiss this color around a little bit so that it's not isolated all by itself. Like being the only woman in an all-men's business meeting or something like that. You'd feel very uncomfortable, so we don't want to have this orange color be isolated as well. Okay, and I think what we're going to do to start that process is we're going to go ahead and make an orange flower. So we'll make these balls on this orange flower. And let's see, if I went yellow, orange, pink, blue, purple, or something like that. Okay, you know what? We're going to make that into a yellow flower right there. And we'll make the one next door into the orange. And then it can fade from color to color, like our color wheel kind of thing. Okay, then I'll just rebase over those. So then our next colors are going to be, so yellow, orange, we're going to go pink. So we mix our red violet with our white. We want to keep these values all about the same, so we want everybody to be about equal in value change. So we don't want a really white pink. I'm getting a pinky, pinky, pink, pink. So, and I'm just using the tip of my round brush. And the centers are all going to be the yellow color. Ooh, and that, see how that orange just comes screaming up there in the middle? I think what we'll need to do is knock it back just a little bit with a little touch of the milk chocolate. Because that is very, very, very bold. All of the other guests will be talking about her. That's a better color. Okay, I have to wait till those dry to do that. The yellow flower we'll just make into yellow ochre, maybe with a touch of mocha in it. And you know what, you gotta leave room for those circles, so make sure you're evenly spacing them. So then we go into our, let's see, I guess we'll go from there to purple and then to blue. Last one will be blue, and then do all the centers and then rebase them should they need it. And then I'm going to rebase my butterfly as well so he's solid. One more homework assignment while you're out there. The back of this little guy right here is going to be in the blue, so while you're doing your flowers in the blue, you can make the back end of him a light blue. And we chose blue because it's going to settle a little bit into that black background, so it's not going to steal away the attention over there at the edges. So we'll just make that about the same color. And then we'll do our glazing and all of our magic stuff on top of it. Okay, last one's blue. Helps if you have some paint in your brush. You know, I've gotten a lot of comments from people saying how, you know, they like that I show the mistakes and stuff like this. Every painter, I've never ever painted with a painter, teacher, or anybody that was perfect. They all just kind of punt. I think what teachers have sometimes that students or more novice painters don't have is they have confidence. And so, and the only way you get confidence is by doing it. So just get in there, get your feet wet. And, for God's sakes, it's only paint, and you can just base it back out. So you don't need to worry about, you know, oh my gosh, it's ugly, it's a mistake. Well, then get out your base coat color and start over. This is supposed to be fun. Okay, I like how that transitions up there. Okay, here's some more for Carolyn that asked me to show how to do something small with a huge brush. I'm still in that 1/2-inch brush, and I've got little, I don't know, 1/4-inch ball things here. So what we need to do is we need to carry these colors onto each other. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a little purple on our blue and a little blue on our purple. Okay, so I want to highlight these with the lighter purple. So that's the purple and the white. And I'm making a little brush mix on my palette of those colors. I'm not going to worry too much about making it be an exact, precise little mix. Okay, so that's got purple on that side. Then we'll go on to the pink one. We'll put some purple onto the pink one. And then we want to do the same with the little leaves. Okay, so this one's got pink, purple on this side. Get a little darker purple, because that's not showing. And I think on the lower area, make that be, let's do the upper area. And the reason I'm saying that is because I think I want to do some yellow highlights on the other area. So that one will be blue, and then we'll make, that's not going to work so good for my poor blue guy over here. But that's okay, we'll figure it out. Okay, so then the purple flower gets a little bit of the pink on the pink side. It's going to get a little bit of the blue, and then the orange is going to get a little bit of the pink. Okay, and then orange gets a little bit of the yellow. Now, while we have yellow in our brush, let's go ahead and do the bottoms of all the flowers, all the leaves in the yellow. Okay. And then we're orange onto the yellow flower. Remember always to turn your project when you get in an uncomfortable angle. And I think let's go ahead and kiss the top of this letter right here where the butterflies landed with a little bit of the orange. Let's see if we like that. I kind of like that orange just coming around the back. You know, let's do that. Okay, let's go with a little float of the orange on the spine there, right in the middle. Now what I have to check for is that getting out of control? Is it being that loud, drunk, obnoxious party guest? Okay, and now let's go on to our piece and give a little glint of that same orange. And let's go into all of the flower centers with that orange as well. Just on the highlight side. Walk that around, give it a little glaze. And that'll carry that orange through the project. And I think while we're down here, let's glint just a little bit onto our green up here so that that is reflecting down, and then maybe even right here with the chisel of my brush. Talk about stealing some thunder. Okay, and then we can even give it over here where this little guy is. Not too much thunder, but just enough. And I think he needs some here too. Flatten that down. Okay. And let's just reflect the same flower color onto the flower. So like blue on blue, onto the leaf. I keep calling those flowers. So we'll just reflect that, like blue gets blue. And then maybe even, let's go ahead and glaze the top with whatever that flower color is on the Create. It's a lot of brush washing, but I think it'll be worth it in the end. Okay, so purple gets purple. Purple letter gets that. I'm into orange right now, but I'm not certain I'm supposed to be yet. Oh, I missed the pink, that's what I did. The pink's going to be a little tough. There's not much of a letter top to that. So we'll just give it a little lazy poo that way. And the yellow is the final one. Okay. Now our butterfly up here is going to have pink dots on his wings. Oops. Pink dots that show would be better. Gotta show. Okay. Orange dots on his back part of his wing. just touching these little touch dots. The centers of all of the flowers are all going to be shaded with milk chocolate, plus that touch of red violet. Let's shade them all coming from the blue side over. Shade our butterfly body with dark purple with the diox. And that's going to be next to his wing. Then we're going to highlight the other sides. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and we need to do our little dip dotty things, but I think all of my flowers could stand to be just a little bit brighter in the highlights. I think increase the highlights just a little bit. Let's switch into our Raphael brush because it does the best little squiggly dot things. And we'll decorate all of those with a little dotted, whatever that stuff is, pollen. Just moving my way back and forth into the colors. Okay, got our orange going on. Not sure I'm doing the orange on the right side. I don't think I am. Orange needs to go over here. Okay. Okay, we need to highlight our butterfly body with the light purple. And this, I have a large float, so I just use gentle pressure. If our dots are dry on our butterfly, he's going to get a nice liner of the yellow. Come down from his wing and strong. And we'll shade on his dots, but not just yet. So let's dot the purple on his antenna and stuff. White. You're in the driver's chair here. You get to decide how much is too bright or too light or too dark or whatever. And let's highlight that antenna. And I want to highlight the stem here. Don't cover it all up. Just one part of the stem. Just I'll give it a little more dimension. Okay, how are we liking that? Okay, I think we're liking it okay. I think we could use a little more of that orange on our different parts of our stem. And it helps if you stay on the stem when you paint it. Painting on this bended thing is very tricky, so be careful when you're doing it, because as it goes downhill between where the boards are, it becomes tricky to know where, just to guide your paintbrush. It kind of takes over a little bit. Okay, this poor butterfly over here is just not looking very loved at all. She looks kind of lonely. A little mousy, I guess. We're going to put orange strokes on her. Okay, we'll start out from here. Make her some little orange strokes. That does brighten her up quite a bit, and I'm a little worried about that. Let's do some blue polka dots with the light blue mix. Just drop dots. Okay, we need to highlight the belly. And that's going to be with our green, so we'll get our light green. We need to highlight this antenna. So come around here. Okay, so this butterfly, do we like that? Okay. So what we have, let's see. Gosh, are we about there? It'd be hard to believe. This has been a lengthy project. I'm thinking. Alright, so now I'm going to need to varnish this. Here's why. I've decided I like this at this point. I had thought about putting a line down here and an artful life underneath, but I really like this space right here. So I'm okay with that staying blank, that kind of that white space, or black space in this case. But if I have my very messy table, and I flip this over on this side without varnishing it, then I will lose the opportunity to fix any problems that I have. This would be the time when I put down a towel or something else under here to protect my piece, okay, because it's painted on the back side. It's finished, it's painted, I love it. So that would be a very good reason, excuse me, and a very good time to put something down. One thing that I'm concerned with varnish and stuff is all the folding that we're going to be doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one coat of varnish, and then I'm going to wax it. So we're going to talk about that right now. And now I've got Jansen, well, I guess it's just Traditions varnish nowadays, but I'm going to use the Traditions varnish, and you don't have problems with foaming with this varnish. You don't have problems with bubbling. It doesn't separate. It is an amazing product, so I do highly recommend it as the only varnish I use now. Unless I have need for something special, but it's the only one that I like. Now I'm going to heavily load my brush, and I want to go here in the middle. Now one thing that you get when you're varnishing is you get pull marks, you know, when you're trying to varnish and it starts drying. With Traditions varnish, what you can do is you can actually, once it starts drying, you can reactivate it with water and re-wake it up so that you don't get pull marks. It's quite an amazing thing. Okay, so I'm going to get it in all these cracks. So I'm attacking the middle first so that I can get it in those creases. And now I'm going to go from the top. Because I know I can reactivate this, I'm not worried about pull marks. This just makes it just amazing. And you want to address your seams carefully so that the varnish gets evenly on there. You don't want it to be kind of quasi in there. Never pour your varnish onto a piece. I have done this so many times and I always trash it. So you always just want to put your varnish on your palette and then pick up with your brush what you need. I love what varnishing does to colors. Varnishing makes all the colors come alive. Okay, I'm looking for evenness. Okay, can you see the difference between the top and the bottom and how vibrant that is? this varnish is just amazing. It's so superior to everything else on the market right now. DecoArt has been an amazing company the last couple of years. They've just really come out with a lot of products that are quality. I'm happy to be associated with them. Okay, so make sure it's even. You don't have to watch this whole process. I'll turn this off for the other part. I'm going to finish the other side, and then I'll allow it to dry, and I'll come back and we'll talk about the waxing. Now I'm not going to paint the other side. Isn't what I meant. But now this is getting tacky. It's a little sticky, so I would pick up. I can go just into a little bit of water, and then I can re-stroke into that, no pull marks whatsoever. Okay. It is. I can't tell you how many times I've run into like, how do I get rid of those marks? Now I thought about spattering this piece. I told you I wasn't going to keep doing this, but I guess I am. I thought about spattering this. That would be a fun look, but once again, I really kind of like how the black contrast against all the colors works, so I decided not to fuzz it up with too much extra little futzy detail, because I think I already have a lot of futzy detail. But if you wanted to, you could. So if we start pulling, notice that I am brushing with an old brush, and I am brushing on canvas, basically. It's got the same texture as canvas. And if you've not ever tried this, this is when you would get foam. And as you can see, there is no foam. So this, the superior use of anti-foaming stuff and all that technology that they've got out right now is what makes this varnish so amazing. And I'm brushing over into the spine where it was dry before, and it's not pulling or giving me any marks. Okay, so I've got that all done. We'll let it dry flat. Look for any little ridges and bubbles and stuff. Clean it up. Yeah, that's a beautiful application. I would have used my varnish sponge, but because of all these little nooks and crannies, I really wanted to do this by brush.